This is VOA Africa.
Good evening, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Wednesday, June 19th. This is Africa 54.
Ugandan health workers issue a grim warning about HIV-infected refugees. New violence triggers massive displacement in northeastern Democratic Republic of Congo. And Ivorian farmers take to the skies for bigger harvests.
We begin in East Africa, where Uganda is home to Africa's largest refugee population, over 1.2 million people, mostly from South Sudan. Health workers are warning that refugees infected with HIV, the virus that causes AIDS, are not being properly tracked for treatment. They say the problems include ignorance, stigma, and refugee mobility. Halima Thumani reports from Uganda's Adjumani district.
45-year-old South Sudanese refugee Rose Amoni knows how damaging HIV can be. She's lived with it for 20 years. Her husband infected her and then died of AIDS, leaving her to care for herself and an HIV-positive daughter.
I
have other children. Because of the difficulty of the cost of school, most of them got married when they were still young. There was nobody to pay for their school fees.
Poverty is the biggest challenge for HIV-positive refugees in Uganda, like Amoni, who acknowledge their status and get treatment. But Ugandan health workers in Adjumani district say fewer than 1,000 refugees are on record as being HIV-positive, while at least double that number are believed to be infected. They blame ignorance for many refusing to be tested or dismissing test results.
They have beliefs that HIV and AIDS is a disease of Ugandans, and it may not affect them as South Sudanese.
In 2015, health workers in Adjumani district recorded fewer than 200 cases of HIV, but that number has more than tripled after the influx of some 200,000 South Sudanese refugees fleeing years of war and conflict. Refugee flows to and from Uganda make checking the spread of HIV a challenge.
When you start somebody on treatment, they first go to Sudan, the other side. So they come back after some time when they are very ill. So it becomes very difficult in terms of control. Also, again, that has contributed to resistance.
2/3 of HIV-positive refugees are women whose families rely on them for a dowry payment from a prospective husband when they marry.
So once you diagnose a female as having HIV, it's like you are depriving them of having wealth from this affected woman. We have had scenarios where it became very difficult for the counselors to declare results to some of these communities, especially the females.
Ugandan health workers say the challenge is in educating the uninformed and those in denial on the need for treatment to prevent HIV from spreading to more vulnerable refugees. Halima Athmani for VOA News, Adjumani, Uganda.
A Kenyan court on Wednesday found 3 people guilty in the 2015 Garissa University massacre of 148 people. The trio will be sentenced on July 3rd. A 4th suspect was acquitted. The 3 men found guilty are believed to be linked to the Al-Shabaab terrorist group. The gunmen stormed the university in northeastern Kenya in April 2015. The siege ended nearly 15 hours after gunmen blasted their way into the campus in a pre-dawn attack, sparing Muslim students but taking many Christians hostage. The Nairobi court, however, freed one suspect, saying he cannot be linked to the attack. He had been arrested while in the company of one of the attackers. Violence has killed at least 161 people in a northeastern province of the Democratic Republic of Congo over the past week. Hundreds of thousands have been forced to flee their homes in the Ituri region. Lucy Fielder has more in this report.
Esther Nzale is living in this camp full of displaced people. She is one of hundreds of thousands who fled violence in northeastern Democratic Republic of Congo recently. Scores have been killed in what is seemingly a resurgence of ethnic clashes between farming and herding communities. And now it could be affecting the spread of Ebola.
The Lendu came during the day on Monday. It was 12 o'clock. We were in the fields when we heard about it. We'd started to run towards our homes, which we found had been set alight. Some people were burned alive inside the houses. We couldn't take anything with us. They killed people with machetes, and we don't even know what they did with the bodies. We don't even know if they buried them. That's why we fled here.
The UN says attacks in Ituri province have largely involved Hema and Lendu herders. They have long been in conflict over grazing rights and political representation. Aid agencies say that more than 300,000 people have fled the violence since early June, and the complications don't end there. Because people are moving in such huge numbers, the UN says tracing and treating patients at risk of Ebola is becoming increasingly difficult. Congo's Ebola epidemic, which spread to Uganda last week, has caused over 2,000 infections since last August, and almost 1,500 deaths so far.
Lucy Fielder of Reuters with that report. On June 19, 1865, enslaved men and women in the U.S. state of Texas finally learned that they were free more than 2 years after President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, which freed all slaves in rebelling states. Every June 19th, since African Americans across America have held celebrations commemorating the end of slavery in the United States. VOA's Jesusamen Oni has more.
It's a summertime tradition involving music, parades, and performances, a commemoration of the day that marked the end of the 246-year era of slavery in the United States.
On June 19th, 1865, General Gordon Granger, who was a Union Army general, who was responsible for the district, the Emancipation District, including Texas, landed in Galveston, Texas, Galveston Bay, and read a proclamation declaring that from that moment, enslaved Africans were free.
Dubbed Juneteenth, or Freedom Day, June 19th is now observed as a state holiday in 45 states across the U.S. For many African Americans, it's a day to reflect on the successes and continuing struggles in the fight for racial equality.
It helps us to understand and explain why America is the way that it is today. And so, while, I would rather that America had never been a slave society, the fact of the matter is that it was, and the effects of slavery are still felt in American society today. So we know from whence we came, and hopefully we are learning how not to repeat the mistakes of the past.
While festivities include concerts and family gatherings, perhaps the most significant is the preserving of ancestry, says Floyd Cooper, illustrator of the Juneteenth for Maisie picture book.
It's a coming together on this day, and the elders in the family pass on stories to the young, and they pass on our family histories, history of our of African Americans, just sort of the legacy of the African-American experience through family stories.
It's the need to continue that legacy that led Kizzy Calhoun to include her son in the Juneteenth parade in San Antonio.
But we have to reach back down to remember where we came from in order to be successful in our future.
Juneteenth this year coincides with the first congressional hearing in more than a decade on reparations for slavery. Supporters are pushing lawmakers for compensation to the descendants of slaves.
Millions of people taken from one continent to another and forced to build basically the modern world system. You can't repair that completely, but what you can do is not only acknowledge it, but try to create a society where the descendants of those people are restored.
As African Americans continue to weigh the lasting impacts of slavery, Juneteenth gives a call to celebrate the nation's step towards liberty for all. Jesusamen Oni, VOA News, Washington.
U.S. President Donald Trump claims that immigration authorities will begin removing millions of undocumented immigrants from America. While some argue that his threats amount to nothing more than heated campaign rhetoric, his message comes as a dire warning to millions of people. VOA's Ramon Taylor explains.
officially kicking off his re-election campaign, President Trump echoed some familiar themes.
We believe our country should be a sanctuary for law-abiding citizens, not for criminal aliens.
His rally comes a day after a barrage of late Monday evening tweets in which he warned that immigration authorities would conduct mass deportations beginning next week. Such an operation would require hundreds or thousands of agents and law enforcement personnel who are already overextended. Proponents argue for more resources.
I think the first thing that has to happen is the government has to have the capacity and the ability and resources to enforce the law. In other words, end the border crisis and make sure that ICE can do its job for the most part in the interior.
The timing of President Trump's announcement raised red flags regarding his intentions. But opponents warn his rhetoric has already proven to have consequences.
I think we can't put it past the federal government to do what they are saying they want to do, because obviously we saw that they went ahead with the plan to separate families at the border. And, you know, as heinous and as horrible as that was, that did not stop them from going ahead with that, right? So I think we have to take them at their word that they're going to try and do that here.
Immigration attorney Matthew Cameron says a massive roundup operation is simply not possible, but he has no doubt that fear will set in among undocumented communities anyway.
That means that people aren't going to go to their medical appointments, they're not going to go take their kids to school, they're going to skip days on the job, if they really believe that there's a possibility.
On the same evening he threatened mass deportations, President Trump said the United States was preparing to sign a safe third country agreement with Guatemala, a measure that would prevent Central Americans fleeing persecution from applying for asylum in the U.S. Ramon Taylor, VOA News, New York.
Now, across Africa, there's a huge dry hair market of weaves, extensions, and wigs crafted from everything from synthetic fiber to human or yak hair. The marketplace is worth billions of dollars. Now, the Tanzanian government is launching a 25% dry hair import tax, which has women and industry stakeholders in an uproar. Lorraine Anthony has the details.
For these Tanzanian women, their wigs are part of their identity. So it comes as no surprise that a tax increase on hair extensions has been met with anger. Tanzania's government has imposed a 25% hike on dry hair imports. In other words, wigs, weaves and hair extensions. They've also added a 10% tax on those made locally in a bid to increase government revenue. But those involved in the production line, importers, retailers, hairdressers and their clientele say the new tax is devastating for business.
I think the government should leave it alone. Leave the original cost as it is, so we can afford to be beautiful. Women have to look good, and if we cannot afford to do so, then we won't be attractive.
If the tax is raised, there won't be enough work for us. This is the only job I have. We have employed ourselves. We leave our homes to go do this work. So if I lose my customers, it will affect me a lot, because this is where I get my daily bread.
Tanzania is East Africa's third largest economy, and it's hungry for funds. That's due to heavy investment in public infrastructure projects.
That report by Lorraine Anthony of Reuters. Now, internet users across Ethiopia are once again surfing the internet. Ethio Telecom, Ethiopia's sole provider, restored service Tuesday after intermittent outages left most of the country's 15 million internet users unable to access the web or social media for the past week. The telecom giant apologized for inconvenience and waived monthly fees and extended times to use prepaid plans. Neither the government nor Ethio Telecom has confirmed why the shutdown happened. But Tilaye Gete, Ethiopia's Minister of Education, told VOA his ministry did not order the shutdown to prevent cheating on a national exam. We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, Ivory Coast farmers go high-tech. We'll be right back.
I am Shaka Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
The lyrics could be French,
English,
Portuguese,
Bantu,
Arabic.
It is the beat.
The African beat that counts.
The beat does all the translations.
It cuts across all languages and gives us the understanding that this is the African beat.
It is so distinct
and adhesive.
It binds us together.
African beat on the Voice of America. For more information, visit our website at www.voanews.com/AfricanBeat.
I'm Clara Frank, and here's what's trending. At a neighborhood in Uyo, southern Nigeria, Hope Frank is showcasing his latest innovation, a mini excavator manually controlled using syringes, plungers, and wires. Frank started tinkering with different electronic gadgets at the tender age of 5, leading him to create a toy helicopter, then a mini grader using an old laptop battery. His latest invention is making him the talk of the neighborhood, where some have been known to gift him small amounts of money as a sign of their support. Frank, who dreams of working with a top engineering company one day, is already working on his next invention, a helicopter controlled by a wireless remote. Next up, Facebook has announced plans to launch a cryptocurrency called Libra, the latest development in its efforts to expand beyond social networking and move into e-commerce and global payments. Facebook has linked with 28 partners in a Geneva-based entity called the Libra Association, which will govern its new digital coin set to launch in the first half of 2020. Facebook has also created a subsidiary called Calibra, which will offer digital wallets to save, send, and spend Libras. It will connect to Facebook's messaging platforms Messenger and WhatsApp's billion users. Facebook hopes it will not only power transactions between established consumers and businesses around the globe, but offer non-banking consumers access to financial services for the first time. And finally, artificial intelligence can cancel out background noise and ensure your smart speaker can still hear you no matter how noisy the room is. Noisy environments such as coffee shops and busy households will not be an issue when speaking to a digital device, thanks to a new technology described as an autofocus for sound. Audiotelligence is able to listen to a real-world acoustic scene and identify prominent sources of sound and cancel out any unwanted interference with effective speech recognition. Existing smart speakers can easily be reconfigured with the software designed to obtain the best possible performance from the processing power available without any calibrating or training. And that's what's trending today.
U.S. President Donald Trump officially kicked off his re-election campaign in Orlando, Florida, Tuesday evening. With its 29 electoral college votes, Florida is one of the biggest swing states in the nation, and taking it is key to winning a second term. Here's VOA White House correspondent Patsy Widakuswara.
Kicking off his re-election campaign.
Tonight, I stand before you to officially launch my campaign for a second term as President of the United States.
With a message of Keep America Great, Trump suggested that 2020 will also be a verdict on the Mueller report on Russian meddling in the 2016 U.S. election.
This election is not merely a verdict on the amazing progress we've made. It's a verdict on the un-American conduct of those who tried to undermine our great democracy and undermine you.
Some 20,000 people filled the stadium. Most are die-hard supporters.
Loved it. I loved getting to see President Trump. I admire him, and I've lived watching him on TV, and it was just great getting to see him and his action and feeling the people and how excited and the emotions everybody was.
We have to build the wall. We have to secure the country.
America first, America first. We have to keep that in mind.
Trump's resort Mar-a-Lago is in Florida, but the state also plays a key role in elections. He chose Orlando because it's located in central Florida, home to almost half the state's registered voters, and is largely independent. In presidential elections, Florida has flipped back and forth over the years between Republican and Democrat.
Florida is an absolutely critical state for the president's re-election prospects. He won it in 2016 by 1 percentage point. It's very difficult to put together the pieces to get to 270 electoral votes without Florida's votes.
Trump 2020 is better funded and more organized than his 2016 campaign, which many observers initially dismissed as amateurish. This time, his re-election strategy will focus on the strong economy and his administration's immigration crackdown as part of his promises-kept message to voters.
Everyone supports a booming economy. Everyone supports a strong America on the world stage. Everyone supports the sort of America that we can all be proud of.
The president has struggled to boost his approval rating, which hovers in the low 40s. And whether his re-election campaign succeeds may largely depend on whether opposition Democrats will nominate a candidate that can unite the non-Trump voters.
If they nominate someone who divides that non-Trump majority of the country, then it's perfectly possible for him to get reelected, as we have seen in American history with 2 presidents in the last half century who got elected with 43% of the popular vote.
Some analysts say the threat of impeachment by congressional Democrats can also rally support for the president, increasing his chance for re-election.
Although this is his official campaign kickoff, Trump has hosted more than 60 rallies since 2017. He even filed for re-election hours after his inauguration. Next on the American presidential election cycle is the Democratic debates, the first one set to begin in June 26th. From Orlando, Patsy Vidapuswara, VOA News.
It's time for our technology report, and joining us now is Africa 54 tech reporter Paul Ndiho. Paul.
Hello, Esther. How are you?
Good.
An Ivorian agriculture technology company is introducing locally assembled drones to help farmers boost crop production. It's part of an initiative across Africa to increase crop yields through the data-driven technology. The World Bank study says agriculture is an essential driver of Ivory Coast's economy, accounting for 22% of its gross domestic product and more than 75% of its exports. Palm tree farmer Emmanuel Adu looks on as engineers prep a drone at his farm in Sikensi, 80 kilometers northwest of Ivory Coast's commercial capital, Abidjan. Adu is among a growing number of farmers now using drone technology to boost crop production. For Adu, the days of back-breaking work at his plantation ended after he sought help from Investive Group, an Ivorian company that specializes in precision agriculture.
In the past, we would physically irrigate the farm, but today, with this technology, we can irrigate the crops from above with the use of drones, as well as spraying fertilizers from above. That's why I was very interested in this new technology. I wanted this company to work with us and to help our workers.
Precision agriculture incorporates a technology like drones, sensors, and GPS devices that allow farmers and researchers to monitor and optimize their crop growth and assist in conserving resources such as soil and water. Investive Group uses drones to capture aerial imagery of crops and other physical features of farms. The data is then analyzed to identify the types of plants, the potential yield and health, as well as whether pests or the weather have damaged the crops. Investive Group CEO Abubakar Karim says farmers must embrace technology and innovation.
When we talk about precision agriculture, it's really about being able to identify and pinpoint the exact areas of the farm that may have issues. For example, based on data received from the drone, we are able to assess the health of the crops or areas that need a boost in growth and we compare and contrast to find out if there are issues around water, irrigation, or issues around crop fertility and so on.
Côte d'Ivoire Drone is another company facilitating access to drones technology in the West African nation. Moroccan-born entrepreneur Muruna Jaba says Africa is ripe for innovation in the aerospace industry, although the technical skills gap remains a challenge.
It was challenging for us at the beginning, but it has become easier over time. We can now assemble up to 4 drones a day. If we have all the pieces here, we can put out 4 drones a day.
Meanwhile, in landlocked Malawi, which suffers from periodic crop failures and is prone to flooding and is frequently in need of food and other aid, limited road access makes it difficult to get needed help to its rural communities.
We are understaffed. That one extension worker is covering 3,000 farmers instead of 700 farmers. So if we can have access to these modern technologies, definitely we can ease our work and we can produce reports in relation to what is actually happening on the ground.
Malawi's government and various United Nations agencies are using the country's drone testing corridor to analyze a drone assessment of crop health in the region. The data is cross-checked against a ground survey and then shared with farmers. That's today's Tech Report. Back to you, Esther.
Paul, before you go, I mean, this is really good news for the continent, but I'm just wondering, is this technology using drones available to the core farmers in the villages, in the rural areas who really do much of this kind of work?
That's a great question, Esther. Well, if you're doing subsistence farming, probably you're not looking at drones. But if you're into commercial farming, this is the way to go. A lot of countries, a lot of farmers who have deep pockets and they're willing to invest into drone technology are obviously going to look up to it because one, it saves time. You can cover a wide range of area just by using a drone. And secondly, if you want to monitor your crop yields, you definitely need something like that that is going to deliver results that you're looking for.
Are you looking into, in terms of how much do these drones cost, because cost is another issue, and also the training for farmers to be able to use such kind of technology? Well,
first of all, you need to have the technical know-how, how to operate a drone. Not every Tom, Dick, and Harry can operate a drone, but if you're a farmer who is willing to invest in guys who are savvy about drones, they can do it for you. And the cost obviously is still a little bit higher, considering that this is the first time most of people are using the drones.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much. All right, let's join Paul Diho every Wednesday for another tech segment here on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, have a good night.